Nick Pratto is having a good spring, but is he doing enough to force the Royals' hand? We'll tell you next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can follow me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can find us on wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. We're also on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Goal is to get to 1,200 by opening day. We already shattered the 1,000 goal, but want to keep things going and keep increasing those numbers. So about 80 subscribers away from 1,200. So might not get there, but at least it's our goal here for the next couple weeks. So continue to subscribe. And if somebody hasn't that you know of, send it to them so they can hit that red button and keep the numbers moving forward. As for the podcast, if you want to find out on Spotify and Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, leave us a review. Hopefully a good review if you like this podcast and you want to know more. You want to listen more, leave a comment as well. Let us know if there's things you want us to do better, more talking points that you'd like us to go over. We want the feedback from you, the listener, because I want to make this the best possible podcast for Royals fans out there. I don't do this for myself. I do it for you guys so you can have some really good content on a team that you care a lot about. And even if it's spring training, it's the offseason, it's the regular season, hopefully one day the postseason, that doesn't change the quality of this content and how much I enjoy putting out this content. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is right around the corner, and we've got a way for you to win some big-time money. And all you got to do is win a $5 bet, and you can get $150 in bonus bets. Seems like a no-brainer to me. So after this podcast episode, go over to FanDuel and create your account and start making some money today. If you're a first-time listener, of course, welcome in. We love new listeners here on the Locked On Podcast Network, especially here with our Royals channel. And if you want to know a little bit more about me, I work in Kansas City at Sports Radio 810 WHB. Got a show once a week over there. And also have a show Monday through Friday on ESPN Kansas City, though this week a little bit different. I'm going to be going out of town on Thursday. I won't be back till Monday. So if you're wondering about when the podcast episodes are going to be coming out, well, every morning, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'll have an episode out for you. We'll not have one Friday, though I am going to do a mailbag segment, just going to answer those questions on Twitter. That'll be the easiest way to do it. Saturday and Sunday, no episode. Monday, no episode either. So it'll be 4 days of no Royals podcast. But then the following week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I'll bleed into Saturday so I can get that 5 episode a week threshold that we always have for basically the majority of the year. There's only a few months in the off season that we do 3 episodes a week. But right now, in the full swing of things, we're gearing up for the regular season. You can be expecting on most weeks 5 episodes a week. So we want to give you as much Royals content as you can possibly take in. And I know for one of these segments today, it's something that a lot of people are talking about. And I think a lot of fans have been asking me my thoughts on them. And so I thought, why not make this our headliner for a Tuesday edition of Locked On Royals? And that involves Nick Pratto. Nick Pratto is a guy that maybe I'm not as high on. He's not somebody that I really have felt was going to translate into a big-time contributor with the Royals. I felt like he didn't hit the ball hard enough. I felt like the power wasn't really there. And when you're a first baseman and you're his size, you got to have a little bit of pop there. Like you look at Vinny Pasquantino, even though he's not been healthy, you can tell that is a first baseman. He's got the power. He hits the ball hard. He's got a good walk rate. Nick Pratto simply put strikes out too much to be an everyday player. And I know for some out there, you desperately want him on this team. You want him to play first base. You think eye test wise, he's a gold glove first baseman. I have different thoughts on that. I don't think when you look at the advanced numbers, the sabermetrics of it, that Nick Pratto is really that good of a defensive first baseman. To me, it's more of the eye test thing, that he just looks good at times on TV because first baseman, I think from time to time can look really good over there. If they have a scoop, or they make a diving stop on a ground ball, you naturally think, which baseball has told us that over the years. That's a good fielder, right? But it may show that the range isn't quite there, or maybe that it was an easy pick or an easy scoop. There are also things that make the elite first basemen elite defensively. And it's more so about their range. Even arm strength is important for a first baseman. There's a lot of different ways you can save runs over there. And Nick Pratto, to me, not good enough defensively to just lock down a spot over there and push Vinny Pasquantino to the DH role. Now, spring training has been a little bit different. He has looked pretty good. Now, there are people that are going to say spring training numbers don't matter. I would agree with them. The stats, the batting average, the OBP, it's not really something I'm going to buy too much stock in. You hope things go well. It gives you a talking point, really. And for Nick Pratto, he's got good numbers so far in spring training. That is, unfortunately, what we have to go off of. There's not any other, baseball savant stat we can pull up here because spring training is not as accessible in Major League Baseball right now. So the numbers, that's what we have to pull from. And Nick Pratto's been getting a lot of two-strike hits. He's got a couple of home runs. He's doing exactly what a young player needs to be doing in spring training. The goal for a young player and a guy who is on the fringe of making the roster, is buried behind a guy, you want to force the hand of the front office. You want to force the hand of your coaches and saying that, he's hitting too well. He's playing first base pretty well. We need to keep him in this lineup. We need to find a way to put him up here. And, even if Nick Pratto continues the rest of the month to hit really well, it doesn't guarantee him a roster spot. But I can tell you this right now, he's doing exactly what he needs to be doing. For a guy that is entering a year that is vitally important for his future in Kansas City and being an everyday player, he's got to contribute. He's got to play well. And even if that means not in Kansas City from the get-go, he's got to do it from Omaha. He has to show in Omaha that, hey, I'm too good to be kept down here. Make a spot for me. I have to be up in Kansas City. And I think he's young enough. I think he's got the tools. But the first 2 years in the big leagues have shown us that a glaring problem for him is at times he's too passive with two strikes. He's almost more so looking for a walk than looking for a hit. And I think there was a fine line there. I think you can have a good approach and have a good eye and spit on a few pitches and be okay with a walk. It's a different thing to be looking for a walk. Because if you're looking for a walk, you're not as aggressive in the zone. And I think Nick Pratto needs to be. If those hard hit rates can go up, the sweet spot, the barrel percentage, those numbers can increase the average exit velocity, getting into that 90th percentile. That's going to intrigue me a bit more than what he's doing right now. Again, to this plan for Nick Pratto, a lot of it is going to come down to how MJ Melendez fares, how Hunter Renfroe fares, how Velasquez and Pasquantino. Those four guys right there are going to dictate if Nick Pratto gets a legitimate shot in Kansas City. The reason I say that is because Melendez has a corner outfield spot. Renfroe has a corner outfield spot. Pratto technically can play both. Not well, but he can play both. And I think it's more so important to look at the Pasquantino and Nelson Velasquez situation because Vinny is going to be this team's first baseman. Even if he struggles out of the gate, he's going to be in the lineup every single day. Velasquez has to earn that spot. He has to be a guy from April and on to be a consistent contributor day in, day out. If you're a DH, you got to hit well. You can't be a subpar hitter and only be a hitter. So if Nelson Velasquez does not get off to a hot start and he becomes a liability, a black hole, well, enter Nick Pratto. That's where he can come up and maybe Vinny and him can rotate between first base and DH. If Pratto can be that guy, just that first call from Omaha. I mean, Nick Lofton's going to be in the running for that. I'd imagine a Drew Waters or Dairon Blanco is going to be in the running for that. You have to look for the right strike. And I hope that Nick Pratto, if he starts the year in Omaha, which I expect him to, even with a good spring, learn how to play the outfield pretty well. That gives you flexibility. If he's stuck at first base, well, problem for you is that Vinny Pasquantino is wanting to take that first base job and run with it. And he's going to have a better bat than you probably the entire time they're both in Kansas City. So you have to make yourself more valuable, more flexible, and I'm sure that they're telling Nick Pratto that. But I got to give him props. He's doing exactly what he needs to be doing in spring training. Force the hand of the coaching staff. If you play well enough, they're going to put in their minds that, hey, he looks really good, And if he gets off to a good start in April and somebody doesn't in Kansas City, well, he's going to be the first call. And I think having that power, lowering that K rate, those are vitally important to Nick Pratto getting back up to the bigs in Kansas City and contributing at a high level. Okay, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, I got to believe Alec Marsh has a pretty firm spot in this bullpen now with Carlos Hernandez and John McMillan having slower starts to spring training. I'm going to back that up next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Be sure to give me a follow on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Before we go any further, want to give a shout out to one of the sponsors today we're very proud of in PrizePicks. Now, with PrizePicks, I'm going to give you the full rundown here because even though football season may be over, the action on the floor is heating up. Whether it's tournament season or a fight for a playoff home court, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of the year. Get in on the excitement with PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sport, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into some serious cash. Now, you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Do not use it, though, before March 6th. So keep that in mind. Not before March 6th do you want to get in on the PrizePicks. So here is what you need to do. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for the first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB, for a first deposit match up to $100. Alec Marsh is a guy that I feel like is a stereotypical bullpen guy that every once in a while can slide into the rotation. I thought his stuff would always play well in the bullpen. I thought that his stuff had a lot of good swing and miss to it. But last year, the Royals were shorthanded and needed him to start in the rotation. So the initial reaction for Alec Marsh is, well, the guy's not good. I don't want him in the bullpen. And I had somebody tell me that today. It was, well, he needs to be in Omaha. His numbers weren't that great. And I went back and kind of broke down the available spots in the bullpen. Right now, I believe there's 2 because Carlos Hernandez and John McMillan at this point don't seem likely to make the roster. Hernandez dealing with a little bit of an injury problem, and John McMillan is healthy, but Matt Quatrero made it seem like he's still trying to get synced up. And when you hear that, it just doesn't seem like it's a glowing response to put him in Kansas City. And there's no rush to. I mean, I think John McMillan is the best pitcher in this bullpen. I think he's got the best stuff. But you also want to make sure that he's 100% fully ready to go. When I was in Surprise and I talked to McMillan, he said that he felt good to go. All things were pointing in the right direction. But right now, it seems like command might be a little bit of an issue in some of these live BPs. So you get that straightened away. You get that figured out. Won't be an issue moving into the regular season. But I'd imagine the Royals slow play that a little bit. So it opens up the door for 2 spots. We know that, Will Smith, who's thrown once and was flawless against Cleveland on Saturday, had 2 strikeouts, 7 pitches, all strikes. No harm, no foul there. Nick Anderson, I think from time to time has looked good this spring. Chris Stratton, there's another guy. You have John Schreiber, there's 4. You're going to have James MacArthur, there's 5. And I think Matt Sauer is going to crack this team as a Rule 5 pick. Haven't seen him in the last couple outings, but I've been given no indication that they're wanting to send him back to New York. So there's 6 guys, and you can try and carry 8 bullpen guys. So if Hernandez and McMillan are not going to grab one of those spots, well, who do you think they're going to turn to? Well, the options are these guys. You have Marsh. You've got Tyler Duffy, who's a non-roster invite. I'm pretty high on Tyler Duffy, so he absolutely could make a run at that spot. Sam Long, the lefty they got from Oakland, it picked him up, and he was a minor league deal guy, non-roster invite. He's looked really good this spring. You've got somebody like Daniel Lynch. I have not been that impressed with Daniel Lynch in camp. His velocity is down anywhere from 89 to 92 miles an hour, and with topping out at about 93, 94. That, to me, is not enough to be reliable and effective guy out of the bullpen. I would need more velocity from a left-hander if that's to be the case. I look at somebody like Dan Altavilla. He's another non-roster guy. Will Klein, Matt Quatrero said on MLB Network that he's a guy they've been really impressed with. Maybe he's somebody that just shocks everybody and breaks camp with the team. You've got that elite fastball. He was great last year. Was at the Futures game, the lone representative for the Royals. Maybe he breaks camp. Jake Brent's had a chance. He has walked, I think, 8 or 9 guys and gotten about 4 to 5 outs. So not looking likely that Jake Brent's is going to be in Kansas City on opening day. Josh Taylor has a chance, not overpowering stuff. But the point I'm getting at here is there's nobody that's jumping off the page as it's got to be him if it's not Hernandez or McMillan. I think Alec Marsh has the best strikeout stuff of the bunch. I think that he's got the most durability of the bunch when I'm bringing up guys like Josh Taylor and Jake Brents and Dan Altavilla. Tyler Duffy missed basically all of last year. Those are guys that were not healthy. So I go to Alec Marsh, who had a 10 plus K per 9 rate. I think it was 10.4. So he's striking out well more than just one guy per 9. His sweeper had a whiff percentage of 45%. That's a pitch you can go to a lot more out of the bullpen. His fastball had good life, averaged around 94 and topped out at 97, 98. I think that stuff can play. You limit the amount of balls that left the yard, which that will naturally go down throwing out of the bullpen as opposed to 5 or 6 innings in the rotation. I think there's some signs of growth there. But my reasoning is you need a right-hander in the bullpen. If you want to save the other spot for a lefty, be my guest. Look at Sam Long. Look at Josh Taylor. Look at Jake Brents if you want to. Look at Lynch if you want to. But for a righty, the options are going to be Tyler Duffy, a non-roster invite, who can be down in AAA and he can be ready on the call if he needs to come up to the bullpen at some point throughout the season. Will Klein, I just don't think they're going to make him, have that jump so early in the season. There's no rush. I think he's going to have, a big-time role in this bullpen at some point, but you want to iron out, the command a little bit. Alec Marsh at times dealt with some command issues, but I don't think enough where it's a liability. I think right now he's the front runner. We're not talking about him enough, but he's already gotten a start down there in Surprise. He's thrown a few innings. I think his stuff looks pretty firm. It looks good. It's more of a matter of the Royals have definitely revamped and overhauled this bullpen. That is undeniable. You look at the top half of this bullpen, it's much better than it was last year. I mean, there's 5 guys I really feel comfortable in right now. And then you lose Hernandez, you lose McMillan, which are 2 big-time boom guys in the bullpen, but you can slow play them. And the depth is a concern for me in this bullpen. If guys start going down, who are you going to turn to? There's not going to be a lot of guys down in AAA Omaha that you just are, barely being able to keep down there because they're so effective. I think Alec Marsh is somebody you go, okay, who threw more than 60 innings last year? Of the guys I just rambled off. Well, Alec Marsh was the only one. Who had the best strikeout rate of the bunch up in Kansas City? It was Alec Marsh. He was somebody that had good swing and miss stuff. That's going to play in the bullpen. And the Royals are comfortable with him. They've worked with him before. Not saying that rules out Sam Long and Tyler Duffy and Altavilla, but to me, it just feels like he's got the leg up. It feels like he's got the best chance. And as long as he takes care of business for these final couple weeks, again, we're coming up on 3 weeks till opening day, I don't see a spot in which he's just exiled to AAA unless Tyler Duffy or Sam Long or Daniel Lynch just absolutely go on a tear and they grab that spot from him. I think they look at Alec Marsh and say, he's our stopgap guy here. He's our placeholder. Same with Matt Sauer, I would say. And then when you get Hernandez and McMillan back, it leads you into a decision you need to make. That's where I'm at a little bit with Alec Marsh. There's some people that aren't going to really love that pick, but he's kind of slipped under the radar a little bit because the numbers on the surface didn't look great last year, but I thought there was a lot to like. There were some good outings that I went, there's somewhat of a future there. He's a big-time, baseball analytics guy. He focuses on that. He works with Rapsodo. He spends his offseason trying to find data point to get better, spin rate, all of that. That's somebody I think can have a future in the bullpen. I think he can play well, and if he can air it out for an inning rather than 5 or 6, maybe you have somebody with that wipeout sweeper to pair with a 96, 97-mile-an-hour fastball. I'm curious what Alec Marsh could look like early on because I'm starting to believe that he is going to be in this bullpen, assuming John McMillan and Carlos Hernandez are not ready to go by opening day. Well, before we move on to our final segment, I want to give a shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. When we return, I'm going to tell you a couple of guys that I feel like have their chances slipping away from them and surprise Arizona. That's next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm host Jack Johnson. Be sure to give me a follow on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to the other sponsor today and our title sponsor in FanDuel. Now, with FanDuel, you can get buckets with your first bet with America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And as I teased at the very beginning of today's episode, March Madness, as we know, is just a couple weeks away, one of the best times of the year, at least I believe it to be. I was born in late March, which I think is very fitting that my two favorite sports in basketball and baseball have two of the greatest events coming up, March Madness and an opening day for baseball. It doesn't get much better than that. But with FanDuel, you're going to have a lot of opportunities to win money with March Madness and with the games you can bet on, the prop bets you can bet on. Should be a fantastic time gearing us up for the Major League Baseball season where hopefully you've already placed down some futures bets. Maybe Cole Reagans to win the Cy Young, maybe Bobby Witt Jr. to win the MVP. You can play around with that and maybe win a big-time payout. You can cash out with a lot more money than you started with. But with this code we give you, with this bet we can give you, just use it, man. Locked On MLB, LOCKEDON MLB, and any winning $5 bet will get you $150 in bonus bets. That seems like a steal. So after this podcast episode, go and create your FanDuel account today. Well, with spring training now about, I think, 10 games in, the Royals will play later on tonight against the Chicago Cubs. If I'm not mistaken, that game will be accessible on the app. It's not going to be the Royals broadcast. I believe it's the Cubs broadcast, but Brady Singer is going to get the ball, and you'll have a chance to see some of the Royals in action. I know I'm going to be watching that a little bit and hopefully getting some good content from it to talk about on Wednesday morning. But to me, this is kind of the point in spring training where you have a really good feel as to who is going to make this team, who is not going to come close to making this team. And I have already identified a few guys that either I think are going straight to AAA or I think are just going to be, let go at this point. Because that's the unfortunate reality of spring training. When you have so many guys in camp, a chunk of them are not going to have a future with your ball club. And I think I'll start it out with an obvious one, a guy that has not looked good whatsoever. And you do feel for him because he's gone through so much. His story was so cool in the beginning, but now it just looks like injuries are what got the best of his career. And that's Jake Brentz. Jake Brentz had talent. I think it was a great find for the Royals scouting department. I mean, when you look at somebody like him that was down in Double-A and High-A, not even coming close to throwing strikes, but had this lively fastball, the Royals took a chance on it. And he broke camp with the team in 2021, kind of became that circle of trust guy where he's throwing 98, 99, 100 with a wipeout slider and good changeup. I mean, there was one year where Jake Brentz was like this elite back-end guy for this ball club. It was one of the better Royals bullpens we had seen post-2015. And Jake Brentz was a big reason as to why. But 2022 rolled around. He was just awful in April. When he got hurt, he misses the rest of 2022. He misses the rest of 2023, has a setback at the end of 23, comes into camp. You feel like he's healthy. I watched a couple of his bullpen sessions. Wasn't throwing upper 90s, probably more so mid 90s, which is still impressive dealing with, elbow and arm injuries. But the command is back to being a huge problem. And that even when he was going well, was a big-time problem for him. When he wasn't throwing strikes, he was missing by a lot. And now when you factor in the velocity's not there, the command's not there. Again, I think he's walked 8 or 9 in 3 outings. Strikeout numbers have been better in his last 2 outings, but there was one where he walked 5 in 1 outing. He's walked 2. He's walked 3. I mean, it's just not going in a positive direction for me. And I don't think the Royals are looking at him with the way the other guys are throwing, like Sam Long, like Josh Taylor, and seeing him as a realistic option. Now, the hope is maybe you can hang on to him, and in AAA Omaha, he finds that command. He builds up that velocity. I don't know if it's going to happen at that point. I really did think that he was going to be one of those guys to break camp with the team. I think his chances are slipping away at this point. Unless the Royals have looked at him and said, no matter what happens, he's breaking camp with the team. This is coming to be the end of the road, I think. And maybe he can find some success again in AAA Omaha, and then you can get him back up to Kansas City. But right now in spring training, with what we have to go off of, hasn't been too good for me. Number 2, another non-roster invite, Dan Altavilla. I talked to him down in Surprise. Great story. And it was said in the Winter League he was throwing in, I believe it was the Dominican Winter League, he was throwing upper 90s. You know, he had kind of built back up that velocity. From the sounds of it, it doesn't look like that velocity is really sticking in Surprise. It's more so like with Brent's in the mid-90s. The strikeout numbers are not there. He was roughed up. And for non-roster invites, it's such a long shot. You know, it's a lottery ticket, if you will. If you hit on a guy, then wow. You know, they had a long ways up. They had a battle to go through in Surprise or spring training, wherever they were throwing, and they, broke camp with the team. But Dan Altavilla is a guy that got roughed up, and non-roster invites can't really have that luxury of being roughed up. And even if you do succeed, sometimes it doesn't get you a spot on the team. Sometimes it makes you trade bait for the team to go ship you off somewhere else. So for Dan Altavilla, even if he wasn't going to be pitching in Kansas City, I was kind of hoping that he got a shot elsewhere because he's a really nice guy and had a really cool story. I just don't know if there's going to be enough in the tank, though. So he's another guy that I think is having a really great opportunity slip away. And number 3 for me, I'm probably going to have to say this is another pitcher. It's Daniel Lynch. Daniel Lynch, to me, was being put on a pedestal a little bit by people that thought he's healthy, he's going to come into camp. I want him to be the number 5 starter. I do not want Jordan Lyles there. Daniel Lynch needs to be the guy. I think he's let this opportunity slip a little bit. He hasn't been terrible, but he's not been taking the job and running with it. And I don't really care about, the runs given up. I don't care about the workload. I don't care if it's 1 inning or 3 innings. I don't care if he strikes out 3 or 4 guys over 2 innings. I'd like to see the velocity uptick because we've talked about this with Daniel Lynch. He can't be a contributor at the big league level if the command's not great and he's sitting 90 to 94. Daniel Lynch at one point in time could run it up 95, 96, 97. He needs to be in that range. And right now, it doesn't look like the velocity's there. And he's not going to be an option for the Royals if the velocity's not there. And to me, having this opportunity, being able to start kind of in this 6-man rotation they're going with, I've been a little bit let down. And I'm high on Daniel Lynch. I think there's a prospect in there, but a lot has to get better. And I mean a lot has to get better for him to be in this rotation or at bare minimum to get into this bullpen. So those 3 guys are really the ones that I kind of see as letting some chances slip away down in Surprise, Arizona. They grab a spot, maybe in Kansas City in the bullpen or in the rotation. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Be sure to give me that follow on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. One last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. Tomorrow, we're going to break down a little bit of that game between the Cubs and the Royals. Going to look at what Yonder Alonso said on LB Network about their division chances. Are more people buying into this Royals team? And should we believe them? Or are we just ready to be hurt again? We'll find out in tomorrow's edition of Locked On Royals. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.